Today, we're jumping into one of the most practical parts of Miyamoto Musashi's legendary work, the Book of Five Rings. We're going to be looking at the Fire Scroll, not as some ancient combat manual, but as a seriously brilliant guide for tackling our modern challenges with a calm, decisive approach.
You know that feeling when you feel completely and utterly stuck? Like you're trapped in this repeating loop, playing out the same patterns over and over, and you just cannot seem to find the exit?
It might be that same exact argument that always flares up in a relationship, or that one unproductive habit you just can't shake, or maybe a project at work that keeps hitting the very same wall. It's exhausting, right? But what if there was a strategic way to break these cycles? Well, today, we're unpacking 3 key ideas from Musashi's Fire Scroll that show you exactly how.
All right, let's get into it. First things first, when Musashi talks about fire, he is not talking about uncontrolled rage or just pure aggression. Think of it more like controlled, focused energy. The Fire Scroll is all about the intensity of a situation, whether that's a sword fight or a tough negotiation, but it's all defined by a cool, calm calculation of tempo and knowing exactly when and how to apply pressure.
The first big concept here is rhythm. Musashi was convinced that everything has a rhythm, from a casual conversation to a massive, complex project. And this isn't just about going fast. It's about understanding the pace, the flow of things, so you can start to influence them instead of just getting swept away.
Next up, we have disruption. And no, this isn't about creating chaos. It's actually a very precise, very proactive move. It's about spotting a negative pattern just as it's starting to form and having a plan to break its rhythm before it can really take hold and turn into a problem.
And finally, there's adaptation. This is the art of being strategically flexible. And this is so crucial. It's the difference between giving up on your goal versus simply changing your path to get there when you hit a roadblock. The objective? That stays locked in. But your method has to be fluid. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into that first principle. To get a handle on rhythm in the world around you, you first have to master your own internal state. Musashi's insight here is that real power doesn't come from frantic, chaotic energy. It comes from a place of calm, focused determination.
What's so wild about this idea is how much it pushes back against our modern obsession with speed. Go faster, do more. Musashi makes it really clear that speed by itself isn't a strategy. Nope. Effective action actually flows from a calm mind that can accurately sense the rhythm of what's happening. When you're calm, you see things as they really are.
So how do we actually do this? Well, first, just start noticing the tempo in things, the flow of a meeting, the energy of a conversation. Then work on cultivating what Musashi called a solid, relaxed pace in your own life. The real key here is that a calm mind is like a fine-tuned instrument. It's what allows you to perceive rhythm accurately. You can be absolutely determined on the outside while staying completely calm on the inside.
Okay, so once you can see the rhythm, you can learn how to disrupt it. This is where we get to be proactive. Instead of just waiting for that negative loop to finish its tired old cycle, you step in right at the very beginning. You stop it before it even gets going.
Musashi had this brilliant metaphor for this strategy, holding down the pillow. It's such a powerful image, right? It's about catching an unproductive impulse, whether it's someone else's or your own, right at the source. You see that intention just starting to rise, and you gently but firmly press down on it before it can become a full-blown action.
And this gives us a really clear, actionable process. First, just practice observing that initial flicker of an impulse, that urge to put something off, or that defensive tone that creeps into your voice. Second, identify the unproductive pattern it's a part of. And third, step in right then and there. Musashi believed that hesitation is a crack in your resolve. The secret is immediate, calm intervention.
But what happens when you run into a problem you can't just disrupt? A real wall? Well, that's when we turn to our third principle, adaptation. This is all about being strategically flexible, finding a way over or around obstacles, without ever losing sight of your ultimate goal.
This comparison here just lays it out perfectly. A fixed method, well, it relies on one way of doing things, and the second the pressure is on or conditions change, it shatters. But an adaptive method, it flows with the circumstances. You're not attached to one specific technique, you're attached to the objective, and you'll find a new path to get there.
Musashi used another great metaphor he called crossing at a ford. Picture this, you're sailing to a destination. If the wind dies just before you get there, what do?
You don't just give up, of course not. You lower the sails, you pick up the oars, and you row. Your destination, your objective hasn't changed at all, but your method has to adapt to the new reality.
So this is all great in theory, but what does it actually look like in our everyday lives? Let's take this three-part framework and apply it to the kinds of challenges we all face at work, in our relationships, and with our own habits.
So, let's say you've got a weekly meeting that always gets sidetracked by the same exact topic. First, you master the rhythm. You start to notice the specific moment, the specific cues when the conversation is about to go off the rails. Next, disruption. Instead of waiting for it to happen, you proactively put that topic first on the agenda, and you give it a strict time limit. And finally, adaptation. If that still doesn't work, you change your method. Maybe that topic is just better handled in a written update, taking it out of the live meeting entirely.
Or how about in a relationship, where a tiny disagreement always seems to blow up into a huge fight? Rhythm is about recognizing that emotional tempo starting to rise, both in yourself and in the other person. Disruption is that gentle pause, saying something as simple as, "Hey, let's just hold this for a moment," before anyone's voice gets raised. And adaptation is agreeing on a new method. Let's talk about this later tonight, when we're both feeling calm.
This framework is also just perfect for personal habits. Say you always plan to work out in the evening, but you always skip it. First, rhythm, you identify that your energy predictably tanks right after work. So, disruption, you break that whole pattern by moving your workout to the morning, before that crash can even happen. And adaptation, if you oversleep one day, you don't just write off the whole day as a failure. You adapt. You go for a short walk at lunch. You change the method, but you keep the objective.
So what is one simple thing you can do, like right now, to start putting all this into practice? Well, it all comes back to that foundational skill, managing your own internal state.
Let's call it the rhythm reset. Anytime you feel rushed or stressed or like you're getting pulled into someone else's frantic energy, just pause. Take 3 slow, even breaths, and then consciously decide to reset your internal pace to one that feels calm and steady. Then, and only then, re-engage with whatever you are doing, but from that new, centered rhythm. It's a tiny action that has a huge impact.
So, to bring it all home, first, learn to see and control the rhythm of any situation. Second, proactively disrupt those negative patterns before they have a chance to take root. And third, adapt your methods. Be flexible to get around any obstacle. And just remember, all of this is built on one simple foundation. Your greatest strategic asset is a calm, focused mind.
And that wraps up our look at the fire scroll. So the question for you is, what unproductive loop, big or small, are you going to break this week using these principles? In our next explainer, we'll be tackling the wind scroll, which is all about understanding other people's strategies to sharpen your own. You can find the entire Book of 5 Rings playlist right here on the channel. Thanks for joining me.